Welcome to the Change Within podcast. My name is Gerard Uselli. We are on episode 62, but this is the second episode of the Essential series dedicated to essential workers that have gotten us through the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is something that's going to be very interesting because we have a teacher on this episode, my good friend, Sean Kelly. Sean, how are you today?
Very good, Jerry. Thanks for having me, brother.
Absolutely. So something that I'm going to mix up compared to what I typically do in my first question is I'm going to ask this relating to your role. Did you always know you wanted to be a teacher?
I always had the idea that I wanted to be. I used to have dreams as a kid where I was the teacher and I was a lot taller than everyone. And I'm like, I'm on stilts, I'm going to fall over. I used to have that. And then after a while, I knew I was very good at, talking to people, relating to people, being able to explain things, being able to engage in conversation. So in a way, I feel like I was gifted in that. Yeah.
That's awesome. And kind of to that point, like even going back then, did you think like your family thought you would be like a teacher at some point, or did they think something like maybe a little bit different for you as well? Was it kind of like the same page ordeal?
In a way, yeah. I got along with my teachers very well as a kid, all throughout elementary school. I was blessed to have been taught by nuns. I remember my middle school teachers really well. For some reason, one of them, my social studies teacher in the 7th grade, he comes to mind. And then throughout high school, I got along with my teachers very well. And then my mother was a teacher before becoming a nurse. I'd say almost 15 years. And my grandfather must have taught for about 30 years before he retired. I had another uncle, I believe he taught before joining the fire department, a great uncle that did the same thing. And I had my great grandmother, I believe she was a teacher, and then she became a nurse at like 39, 40-ish around.
Yeah. Wow, definitely some history there. So my mother was a teacher for over 30 years before she retired. Also have a fair share of family who is currently in the DOE. And I do feel like even if you're not in the field, which I wasn't for 9 years before making my transition into the DOE, It's a very interesting process knowing that level of contagion between however city workers are revolved around you, how you kind of brush yourself from those like type of scenarios too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So my question is kind of relating to a little bit of experience this year for me teaching in a classroom for the first time in a formal setting. What was it like for you to be in front of a classroom for your first time teaching students?
Well, I started out as a substitute. I actually still am. I actually had a bit of a gap for a while. I was doing some traveling for a while, but it was interesting. I was like 25-ish, 26 around. And it's just the last time I was in a classroom, I was a student. And it's just so interesting going from one to the other and the adjustment, but it didn't take long. You kind of find ways to get the students to, there's an old saying, you kind of hook them in and then you kind of get them used to what's going to be taught. So I was able to do that pretty good, pretty easily. And again, I was in my mid 20s and they were like 17, 18. I taught like the older seniors in high school. We were the same generation. I still see them. They're in their early 20s now. So like they're peers. So yeah.
So here's a follow-up on that. When you've seen like people, especially being so close in age after high school, do you feel like you still talk a lot about what was in the classroom with them, or was it kind of like a move forward ordeal with those kids?
I would say it's a move forward ordeal with them. A few of them that I met are doing really well in life. I believe some of them might have gotten married and had kids so far. So they're born in the late 90s. That makes them early 20s. Some of them have really good union jobs. I believe some of them went on to the military and whatnot. They could achieve the rank of E5, which is sergeant by now. So it's I think a lot of them are a lot more mature than I am.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So here's something interesting. And I've kind of divvied up like some assessments of what I think about this myself. But what do you think makes a good classroom?
Definitely classroom management. You feel that you are the leader, but you are not superior. You are the superior, but you're not superior over other people. Your job is to guide them, to be more like sibling like figure, like, and that's why they had like Christian brothers be the teachers. You are like, you're guiding them. I try to come more at a religious standpoint as I get older, but not in a public school setting. I believe that should be left up to the individual. But I feel like I'm guiding people, kind of like how like the apostles would have done so. They would guide other people and have them come to their own conclusion.
I think to kind of break that down a little bit, as far as comparing it to the apostles versus something that
Mhm.
I've thought of as well.
Yeah.
I like to have my classes that I've taught over, the span of 6, 7 months at this point.
Yeah.
I like to kind of design them as cohorts, and similar to what you said about being a leader and being the superior in charge and accountable for your students, the
Mhm.
kids need to work collaboratively in achieving one goal, which is to get to the highest standards based on their capabilities.
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah.
So when you teach, how do you think your personality comes into your role?
I'd like to say I always felt like I've being guided by God. It's a gift that I have. I do question it sometimes. I mean, there's other careers out there, but I feel like I'm being guided. I feel that when I step into the classroom, there is a bit of a change. Yet at the same time, I'm still the same person, and I do know that I will be able to do my job. I'll be able to be accountable, and not only will I be able to be accountable, but I can get my students to actually feel like they can be accountable. And by the way, and you do that by setting a good example. Your actions, your body language, not just what you say, but how you say it. That all plays a role. That ties everything in. Yeah.
Body language is a very important element in classroom management.
Mhm.
Something that I've seen a lot of times. And of course, there's a sense of traditionalism and being in the same school for a while. A lot of people like to sit down. I'm not against it, but I have
Yeah.
gotten a lot better results when you're standing the whole time. You
Mhm.
could be not as great of a teacher, but if your presence is standing in a lot of those cases, they're able to look up to you as far as like, okay, who is the person who's teaching us? Because I come into these situations of being a co-teacher, who the kids
Mhm.
need to trust. And it's just like, we're both staff members. That's
Yeah.
the essentials of who we are. We're both collaborating in our way, compliant with the DOE standards to help guide you through that process.
Absolutely. It's interesting, the co-teaching aspect. It's like playing good cop, bad cop. Some classes, one is doing the teaching, the other one is walking around making sure they're on task. Yeah. And then there's interesting, I worked with a co-teacher for a while, I think social studies, and he said, there's like what you call like the magic phrase, I need you to. And once you say like, I need you to do this, I need you to do that, it's like, boom, it gets the students, it's like, it gets them thinking instead of having to just shout over them. And then space and proximity helps. So when there's someone talking, you just walk a little bit over towards them and they'll stop, you know,
Yeah,
with the space and
typically,
proximity.
like, and again, adding to the body language point of discipline, it's not even, of course, you do have to like raise your voice when needed to be, but I've
Yeah.
noticed there's certain things in body language where you're able to get your students to comply, at least to alleviate the added elements of distraction to the classroom.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I had a really good assistant principal one time. I still see him every now and then.
Oh wow.
And he said it's like being the Secretary of State. You have to be you have to be diplomatic before, like, you go, I don't know, guess I think he said before you go nuclear, you have to start it off as a zero, know when to make it a three, make it a four, maybe raise your voice a bit, show that show that you're serious. But then after a while, that's when you could, I don't want to say get angry, but then, show authority. And once you go from zero to showing authority, there's almost no way you can back down. But the good part about it, especially with teenagers, is they have very, I'm not a psychologist, but it seems like they have a very short-term memory. So the next day, they're not going to remember that. So you just know when to do it the next day, you know?
That is a very good point,
Yeah.
especially in the short term of memory. And I'm not even just going to talk in the school generation of today. This is
Hmm.
just compared to everybody of having phones. I think it's just an inevitability. Doesn't matter the age demographic you're in and what have you. You're going to
Hmm.
have issues in holding attention and listening at the same time because your phone is literally the center of your distractions.
Oh, absolutely. It's when I started, I'd say 2015-ish, 2016-ish around. That was almost not really so much a problem. It's just the past 5 years or so that it really took a I guess it really took a launch or something. I didn't have much of a problem with it at first. I understood kids want to be kids or whatever, and you have to keep in touch with family. A family member might have a medical problem or whatever, but it's really changed the field of teaching since then. Yeah.
Well, something to kind of conspire with that thought as well. And I thought about this when I was teaching in the last 6 months. So
Mhm.
something that I've realized is, let's say with your year of 2015, the
Mhm.
scroll through. I think the scroll through on different apps
Yeah.
kind of divvies the span of attention that is designated per child. And let's
Mhm.
say with the TikTok generation of today, you're kind of having that span of 30 seconds or less, not even just trying to capture attention for forms of entertainment with the kids, but also at the same time, how you as a teacher are able to capture that person's attention in that time span too.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's really changed. Yeah.
So, kind of leading to the essence of the pandemic and you being a substitute teacher in that process, what was
Mhm.
the biggest change you had to get used to for teaching?
It's interesting. I haven't really thought much about it during. I know I didn't have work during the time as a substitute, but I just started taking care of myself more often. I'd read scripture more often. I'd exercise. I'd take care of myself. I taught myself how to cook, make broth or whatnot with the leftover chicken bones. Made different dishes. Um, I'd made use of the golf course that I live nearby. I'd use it for running or maybe hit a couple golf balls when no one's looking. Um, but other than that, like I had a lot of time to reflect. I'd like to say it was in a way like cleansing because not a lot was going on, and I kind of felt like I think he was Saint Ivan or Saint John of Avila in Bulgaria. I actually visited a few years ago, and my dad was going to come, but he wasn't feeling good that day. I had just gotten over being really sick, the sickest I was. This was in 2016, and I saw how he lived as a hermit for many years, and then they built a monastery. So I kind of felt like, Saint Augustine or Saint John of Avila. I could use this time to regenerate or just to formulate a different way of thinking. Yeah.
I think also to kind of add to what you're saying, because I feel like social studies and science has taken a backseat in the education process. And I'm sure you
Mm,
could relate to this, knowing that ELA and math have been the two essentials as far as teaching throughout the curriculum for kids themselves. Some schools, and I'm talking for an elementary school
yeah.
type of teacher. So I'm only going to go with that lens.
Mm,
But let's say with all the hobbies you just stated, which one
mhm.
would you like to bring to the classroom to teach your students?
I would say actually physical activity. We have become a very unhealthy society. I am getting older, and I kind of do feel the effects of aging a bit. I got some gray hairs, but I was actually playing fetch with my dog during the pandemic, and I went down to the I got down push up to get his ball underneath the couch, and I noticed like, wow, like I have no muscle tone left. I just got lazy the past how long. So I just started exercising a bit, like yoga, calisthenics, just start going for walks, and then it'll evolve into a run. I know I met a gentleman, he does like Ironmans, and after doing the Ironman, he'll train 1 year for an Ironman. He'll take a complete month off. The next month, he'll walk. He will just walk. He's so tempted to run that by the second month, he's so tired of walking, he built the endurance back up and he starts running again. So it's all about finding that balance.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that. I'm someone who really believes that exercise is the wheel of your existence. And not
Mm,
to say that your wheel is going to be going in a hamster style, but your wheel is going to push you forward. And in that type of setting, this is something that I wish more programs would try to promote as far
mhm.
as the sense of physical and mental health.
Yeah.
Endorphins. I wish endorphins were more of a terminology based type of appeal that could resonate with students, because when you release endorphins, it channels your creativity.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm speaking for the college level. That's why colleges probably at the time, a long time ago, they had sports programs for their students, because having a strong, have strong physicality would result in having a strong mindset. But maybe this is unrelated, but over the years, just college sports became, just, I guess, bread and circuses. It's a multi-million-dollar business, but I could go on forever. But yeah, bringing it back into the school systems, um, not just having physical ed, but having physical ed teachers that I could actually show kids how to do pull-ups and would have pull-up contests with them. That would be good. Bringing back boxing into school. People think it's crazy. Football was actually, I think statistically, I had a neighbor that told me about it. He's of the older generation. He passed away years ago. But statistically, football has more injuries than boxing ever did. You have a lot of kids venting aggression nowadays, a lot of violence. Why not challenge it into boxing? Why not Krav Maga, Taekwondo? These are just, words that I'm coming up with. I'm no martial artist. Yeah.
Well, to add to that point too, with boxing particularly,
Mhm.
what's interesting about that sport is in football, you're on a team setting and you have a lot of different triggers that can lead to anxiety on the field, having the negative sense as far as confrontation. And not to say that I would be against it, but I'm just kind of adding those types of particular scenarios to it. In boxing,
Absolutely.
it's literally yourself. And I think
Yeah.
that's the most important thing, because that's your nucleus to how you're going to handle yourself then into things like football when the team elements are there. So you're kind of working your way forward from yourself as one person in a sport to many other components as a team.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. We took away the concept of working on yourself, and we've, we have like these team sports now, but it would be really good to have uh just competing with yourself. I like that. It's a good idea.
Definitely. And kind of to bring it back just a little bit with the COVID-19 pandemic, just to kind of get your feedback on this too. How do you think students are handling and adapting themselves throughout the pandemic of what you've observed?
I don't know. It's really sad. You see a lot of cases of young people coming down with mental illness. Um, uh, yeah, they're coming down with mental illness. I'm currently working in a District 75 school. So for those children, it's really sad. They do have, disabilities. It's really hard because they haven't been socializing with their peers and with their teachers and paraprofessionals for a while. So like the first day, the first few days is really rough for them, and it's tough to see. So in that student population, it's been rough. Um, in other parts of the country, I can't speak for it, but I can see like places like Montana. Uh, they're not going. Maybe they haven't been going to schools, but they live more rurally, and they see the prices of college and how political colleges have gotten. So maybe young people are catching on to more fishing, more hunting, more knitting, more gardening and homesteading. And I think that that could very well be the future of education.
I wouldn't be surprised if it took that like initiative back from the 50s and 60s and making it more of a mainstay of education culture today. Of course, like we could all agree as teachers, especially on this, that it was an essentiality to the classrooms,
Mm,
especially for real world experience. So to have that back now, especially knowing that in times of politics and government, you never really know what is your access and what you have access to in that time.
absolutely. So, I mean, call me nostalgic, but I studied history in college. That was one of my majors. Um, like we don't know, like with economics, regardless of your political position, because if there's some sort of economic depression, major recession, or whatnot, having like that skill and knowing how to do things, that's going to get you through, rather than being dependent on like some sort of monetary system. So if you know how to knit, if you know how to garden, how to hunt or fish if you live in rural areas, that's most important, because it's the people that live in the cities that rely on, I guess you can say, bureaucratic services. They would be affected the most, and it would be the most in the most negative way. So learning how to adapt manually with other things, with actual skills, that's the key. And I think people are going back to that because they're kind of starting to sense things.
Definitely. And I wanted to bring this to one of the things that you definitely wanted to talk about on this platform. So I'm going to kind of do that, but then add my own twist as a question. So
Absolutely.
you were talking about writing from before, like in private conversations. So I wanted to ask you this. If
Mm.
you were to write your own book based on
Mhm.
the reflections of the COVID-19 pandemic, what do you think it would
Mhm.
be about?
I think it would be about travel. I think what I would do is maybe come up with a fictional character and tell a story about travels. I don't want to divulge it too much, but I would like to do a children's book series on traveling. Um, going from place to place. Like each book would be about a certain country and its language, its food, and it would what it would do. It would I guess it would encourage people to be more open-minded, more about the world, even about their own country, and it could be adapted into other languages because it's really important to connect with other people. We're so connected now. Yeah.
Not to make this more of like a pitching ordeal on this, but I did think of something when you were saying that. So imagine having a council of foreign relations, but then calling it the children of foreign relations.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Children of foreign relations.
Yeah, yeah. I
Because
think when they learn more at the younger age, it's they'll be more adapted as they get older. Like the best part about learning is learning when you know you're not learning. It's when it
yeah.
becomes subconscious.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's big. That's a
yeah,
big statement right there. And I love it. That's awesome.
yeah. Oh yeah. One thing that when I was a kid, I look back to it, I liked responsibilities as a kid. So I would see my grandfather washing the car. I would want to go out and wash the car. Um, when I would see my dad cut the grass, I'd want to go out and cut the grass. I remember seeing my mom sewing and I wanted to learn how to sew, and I don't. But the worst thing like you can say to a kid is, you're a kid, don't worry about that. No, like the best way to instill a good work ethic is I think humans naturally have a work ethic, is to actually take that work ethic and let them go on with it. Because when you have a skill that can make money, if you have an economic hobby that can make money, why not combine the two? Why not work one off the other? You know?
Absolutely. And that is a
Yeah.
very thought provoking suggestion, to say the least.
Thanks.
Uh, as a finalization to this interview, I wanted to ask you this also to be targeted towards different roles of the people that I will be talking to throughout the series. For you, how can we make teaching more essential than it already is?
Oh, that's a tough one. You see a lot of broken homes in the country. What we have to do is just allow parents to become teachers of their own, teach their own children. And a lot of that has to do with just personal responsibility, learning how to cook, learning how to do certain things, learning about the economy yourself. There's the balance between the macro economy and the micro economy. Know the differences of both. People that live in more rural areas, hunting, fishing, learning how to work the land. We can be our own teachers. And I think the more we teach, the more we actually learn about ourselves and others.
Absolutely. And to close this off, this concludes the second episode of the Essential series for the Change Within podcast. For those who want to check us out but have never had the chance to, you can please check out the Change Within podcast at Anchor, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Sean, thank you very much for joining me today and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Jerry. Take care.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.